They say the lantern guides the lost, but here...
The orchids were blooming when the world ended. I remember standing in the tropical section of Ashworth Botanical Garden, clipboard in hand, making notes about the humidity levels for the rare Philippine species we'd just acquired. The glass panels above me filtered afternoon sunlight into golden streams that cut through the mist from our automated sprinklers. Marcus, our junior botanist, was adjusting the temperature controls near the fern collection. Everything was routine. Everything was normal. Then my phone vibrated with the emergency alert. I pulled it from my pocket, expecting another weather warning or amber alert. Instead, the screen showed a message that made my stomach drop. Civil emergency. Shelter in place. Avoid contact with infected individuals. This is not a test. Are you seeing this? Before I could answer, screams erupted from outside the conservatory. Real screams, the kind that trigger something primal in your chest. I moved to the nearest glass panel and pressed my face against it, trying to see the main garden grounds. What I saw didn't make sense at first. People were running across the carefully manicured lawns, trampling through the rose beds we'd spent 3 months preparing for the spring exhibition. Behind them, others followed, but these others moved wrong. Their limbs jerked at unnatural angles. Their mouths hung open in silent hunger. "Lock the doors," I said quietly. "What?" "Lock the fucking doors." The curse slipped out before I could stop it. The Ashworth Conservatory had 3 entry points: the grand entrance facing the public gardens, a service door on the east side, and a small emergency exit on the west. The building was a Victorian-era masterpiece, an acre of space under curved glass and iron framework, divided into climate zones that housed plants from around the world. I'd worked here for 12 years, rising from assistant gardener to head of operations. I knew every inch of this place. I knew it was mostly glass. Marcus reached the main entrance, just as someone slammed against it from outside. A woman, maybe 30, her business suit torn and bloodied. Her eyes were vacant, filmed over with something milky and wrong. She clawed at the glass, leaving red smears across the surface. More figures appeared behind her, pressing forward, creating a wall of bodies against the entrance. "The service door!" I shouted, already moving. My boots slipped on the damp brick pathway between the plant beds. The conservatory's humidity system kept everything moist, perfect for tropical species, terrible for traction. I caught myself on a support column, felt the cool iron under my palm, and pushed forward. The service door was still open. A man stumbled through it as I approached. For a second, I thought he was normal, just scared and looking for shelter. Then I saw the bite on his neck, the way his pupils had dilated to black pools, the white foam at the corners of his mouth. He lurched toward me with hands outstretched. I grabbed the first thing within reach, a heavy-duty garden spade hanging on the tool rack. The weight felt solid in my hands. The man, no, not a man anymore, just a thing wearing human skin, came at me with surprising speed. I swung. The flat of the spade caught him across the temple, with a sound like a melon hitting pavement. He went down hard among the potted kumquat trees we'd been preparing to transplant. My hands shook as I dragged the door shut and threw the bolt. Through the small window, I could see more of them coming across the parking lot, drawn by the commotion. I shoved a potting bench against the door for good measure. Marcus met me at the central pavilion, his face slick with sweat despite the controlled temperature. "The main entrance is secure, heavy lock." "But Jake..." "What?" "It's glass. All of it. The walls, the ceiling, everything. We're in a greenhouse surrounded by those things. He wasn't wrong. The Ashworth Conservatory was a marvel of Victorian engineering, but it was designed to let light in, not keep monsters out. Curved panels of glass formed the walls and domed ceiling supported by an iron skeleton. Beautiful, delicate, completely indefensible. Or so I thought. "Get me the inventory list," I said, forcing my voice to stay level. "Every tool, every piece of equipment, every supply we have in storage." "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking we're not the first people to get trapped somewhere that seemed impossible to defend." I moved to the control room, a small office tucked behind the bamboo grove. The security monitors showed me what we were facing. Dozens of infected crowding around the perimeter, more arriving every minute. The conservatory sat at the edge of the botanical gardens property, separated from the main city by acres of landscaped grounds. That isolation had always been peaceful. Now, it might be our only advantage. If you've ever felt the moment your life splits into before and after, you'll understand why I'm telling you this story. What happened next wasn't about surviving one day or one night. It was about rebuilding existence inside a glass cage. Hit that like button and subscribe, because this shelter wasn't anything you'd expect. The first hour was inventory and assessment. The conservatory storage rooms held unexpected resources. Commercial fertilizers, bags of potting soil, industrial cleaning supplies, hand tools of every description. The maintenance workshop had power tools, lumber scraps, and a welding kit that old Raymond, our former metal worker, had used for repairs. We had a water system that drew from the city supply, but also collected rainwater in cisterns beneath the building. The heating and cooling systems were automated, powered by connections to the main grid. For now, the power was still on. Marcus pulled up the plant database on the computer system. "We've got over 2,000 specimens in here, Jake, most of them ornamental. Some toxic. A few edible if you know what you're doing." "I know what I'm doing," I said, scrolling through the list. The conservatory's collection was impressive. Tropical fruit trees in the southeast section, banana, papaya, several citrus varieties. Herb gardens near the meditation area, mint, basil, lemongrass, dozens of others. The vegetable garden we maintained for educational programs, tomatoes, peppers, squash, and then there were the less obvious options. Do you know what moringa is? The drumstick tree? We've got 3 mature specimens. Every part is edible. Leaves have more protein than eggs, more calcium than milk. There's a reason they call it the miracle tree. I kept scrolling. Taro root, cassava, sweet potato vines in the tropical tuber section. Passion fruit growing on the north trellis. We've got food, Marcus. More than I realized. 2 men, careful rationing, supplemented by whatever we could grow. Months, maybe. But that assumed the plants continued thriving, that the systems kept running, that nothing went catastrophically wrong. Through the glass walls, I could see infected wandering the grounds. They moved aimlessly when they didn't have prey, bumping into each other, occasionally stopping to gnaw on something that caught their limited attention. One of them had found a maintenance worker's body near the lily pond. I turned away from that view. "We need to reinforce the vulnerable points," I said. "The doors first, then the lower wall panels." We spent the next 3 hours moving everything heavy we could find. Bags of soil stacked 3 deep against the service door. Heavy wooden display benches dragged in front of the main entrance. The emergency exit got blocked with the metal shelving units from the storage room. It wasn't pretty, but it created barriers behind the glass. Marcus worked in silence mostly, just grunting with effort as we hauled materials. Finally, as we were positioning a particularly massive planter filled with a mature sago palm, he spoke. "My sister lives downtown. I tried calling. Nothing goes through. I know. She's probably... Don't." I cut him off, not unkindly. "Don't go there yet. We focus on what's in front of us. That's how we get through this." He nodded, but I could see the grief already settling into the lines around his eyes. Marcus was 26, brilliant with plant genetics, terrible at hiding his emotions. I was 43, divorced, no kids. My emergency contact list had my brother in Seattle and my mother in a nursing home in Portland. They were far away, probably safer than us. I had to believe that. Night fell, and the conservatory transformed. The automated lighting system kicked on at dusk, illuminating the space with carefully positioned grow lights and ambient fixtures. It created a surreal atmosphere. Lush green jungle glowing warmly while darkness pressed against the glass from outside. I could hear them out there. The infected made sounds sometimes, not quite moaning, more like exhalations, mindless breathing that rose and fell in an unintentional chorus. "Should we turn off the lights?" Marcus asked. "So they don't see us?" I considered it. No, we lose the lights. We lose the plants. The tropical species especially need consistent light cycles. Besides, they already know we're here. They saw us enter, so they'll just wait. I don't think they wait. I think they forget, and then remember when stimulated by movement or sound. I've been watching them through the glass, trying to understand the pattern. Stay still and quiet, they drift away. Make noise, they come back. We need to be careful, but we can't live in darkness. We ate dinner in the education center, a small classroom area set up near the herb gardens. Marcus had found some protein bars in the staff break room, left over from someone's forgotten lunch. We split them, chewing slowly, making them last. Around us, the smell of basil and mint filled the air, fresh and alive. "Tell me the plan," Marcus said. "What are we actually doing here?" I'd been thinking about that. Short term, secure the space, establish routines, ration what we have. Mid-term, expand the edible gardens, set up proper growing systems, figure out water and power contingencies. Long-term. Long-term? Long-term, we turn this place into something permanent, a viable ecosystem. We've got every advantage here, Marcus. Climate control, water, soil, seeds. The conservatory was designed to keep plants alive in non-native conditions. We're just adding ourselves to the equation. You really think we can live here? Indefinitely. I think we can try. The first week tested that optimism hard. Day 3, a section of the infected crowd outside discovered they could press against the glass in unison. The panels flexed but held, iron framework taking the strain. We reinforced from inside with cross-bracing made from bamboo poles. Ironically, the strongest material we had was already growing here. The bamboo grove in the eastern section had mature culms thick as my wrist, and I knew how to harvest and cure them properly. Day 5, the power flickered for the first time. My heart stopped until it stabilized. We immediately began work on contingencies, mapping the manual controls for every system, identifying which plants could tolerate temperature drops, moving the most cold-sensitive species to the central pavilion where heat would last longest. Day 7, we faced our first real crisis. Marcus woke me in the middle of the night, We'd set up sleeping areas in the office, thin mats on the floor, hardly comfortable but defendable. His flashlight beam cut through the darkness. "Jake, the south panel. You need to see this." I grabbed my boots and followed him through the darkened pathways. The night lighting was minimal, just enough to navigate safely. We reached the southern wall, and he pointed his flashlight upward. A crack, thin as a hair but visible, running diagonally across one of the lower panels. Below it, the glass bore a dark smudge where something had impacted hard. When did this happen? Don't know. I was doing rounds, checking the perimeter like you said. Just noticed it. I examined the crack carefully, running my fingers near it without touching the damaged area. The panel was perhaps 6 feet tall, 4 feet wide, part of the original Victorian construction. The glass was old, wavy in places, thicker than modern panels, but also more brittle with age. "It'll spread," I said quietly. "Temperature changes, pressure, vibrations. Eventually it'll fail. Can we fix it?" "Not fix. Reinforce." I was already thinking through options. "We need to support it from inside, distribute the stress, and pray it holds." We spent the rest of that night constructing an elaborate framework. Bamboo poles lashed together with rope from the maintenance supplies, braced against the floor and ceiling, creating a lattice that pressed gently against the glass without adding dangerous pressure. We sealed the edges with expanding foam insulation, usually used for winterizing outdoor plants. It looked ridiculous, but when I tested the panel carefully, the stress had diminished. "Will it hold?" Marcus asked. "It'll hold better than it did before." That became our pattern. Identify weakness, adapt, reinforce. The conservatory wasn't a fortress, but it was becoming something more than a greenhouse. Each problem forced innovation. The glass walls that seemed like fatal flaws became observation points, letting us monitor the infected movements without exposure. The iron framework that looked decorative provided anchor points for barriers and supports. The open floor plan that made the space feel vast allowed us to create zones: sleeping area, working area, food preparation, growing spaces. The infected outside began to thin out after 2 weeks, not disappearing entirely, but dispersing. They wandered off in random directions, drawn by stimuli we couldn't identify. Sometimes we'd have clear views for hours. Other times, a dozen would cluster near one section of wall, pawing mindlessly at the glass before drifting away again. "Where are they going?" Marcus wondered, watching from the north wall. "Does it matter?" I guess not. But it did matter in a way. Their movement patterns told us we weren't the only survivors. Somewhere out there, other people were making noise, drawing attention, staying alive, or dying. The infected had to be eating something. I didn't share that thought with Marcus. By week 3, we'd established a functional routine. Wake at dawn when the natural light began filtering through the eastern panels. Check the perimeter for damage or threats. Tend the plants. The regular specimens still needed care, and we'd begun expanding the edible varieties aggressively. I'd started dozens of fast-growing vegetables from seed: lettuce, radishes, spinach. The tropical section's banana trees already had developing fruit. We rationed our remaining processed food carefully, supplementing with increasing amounts of fresh greens and herbs. Marcus turned out to be a decent cook, creative with limited ingredients. He made a salad from young moringa leaves, papaya chunks, and mint that actually tasted good. We ate it sitting on a bench in the orchid section, surrounded by blooms in purple and white and gold. "My grandmother had an orchid," Marcus said suddenly. "Just one, on her kitchen windowsill. She kept it alive for 15 years. I could never understand why she cared so much about one plant. You understand now? He looked around at the thousands of living things surrounding us. It's hope, right? Something beautiful that needs you. Proof that life continues. That's exactly what it is. The question isn't whether you can survive. It's whether you can find reasons to keep surviving. If that resonates with you, if you're still with me in this glass jungle, then you need to hear what happened next. Drop a comment and tell me what you do in my situation, and don't forget to share this story. Month 2 brought unexpected challenges and surprising advantages. The advantages: our food supply stabilized. The expanded vegetable gardens produced enough fresh food to sustain us comfortably. I'd identified every edible plant in the collection and incorporated them into our diet. We ate taro leaves sautéed with garlic chives. We snacked on cherry tomatoes and sugar snap peas. We discovered that the flowers of nasturtiums added a peppery kick to salads. Marcus had been right about the hope aspect, but there was something more practical too. Fresh food kept us healthy in ways that would have been impossible on preserved supplies alone. The challenges: maintaining the ecosystem was intensive work. The conservatory's automated systems handled most of the heavy lifting: temperature control, humidity, basic watering. But plants are living things, and living things get diseases, attract pests, grow beyond their boundaries. We spent hours every day pruning, treating fungal infections, managing the balance between different species. The tropical section wanted to become a jungle, vines growing over everything, larger plants shading out smaller ones. The desert section's cacti needed careful watering to prevent rot. The temperate zone's flowering plants had to be dead-headed constantly. It was exhausting. It was also purpose. I never worked this hard when it was just a job, Marcus admitted one afternoon. We were repotting a massive fiddle leaf fig that had outgrown its container. The thing weighed probably 200 pounds with the root ball. Now it's like, I don't know, sacred duty or something. I understood what he meant. These plants were our life support system. They produced oxygen, food, psychological stability. Letting them die wasn't an option. One morning in week 6, I woke to find Marcus standing at the eastern wall, staring out at the grounds. The sun was just rising, painting everything in shades of gold and pink. He didn't turn when I approached. "There's someone out there," he said quietly. I looked where he was pointing. At first I saw nothing but the overgrown garden beds, the paths disappearing under weeds and grass that hadn't been mowed in weeks. Then movement caught my eye. A figure, human-shaped, moving with purpose rather than the jerky randomness of the infected. A survivor. He was maybe 50 yards away, picking through what had been the visitor's center. Male, hard to judge age from this distance, wearing what looked like hiking gear. He moved carefully, checking his surroundings constantly. Smart. After a few minutes, he headed toward the parking lot and disappeared from view. "Should we try to signal him?" Marcus asked. Every instinct said yes. Another person meant help, company, shared burden. It also meant shared resources, potential conflict, unknown variables. "No," I said finally. "We don't know anything about him. His situation, his intentions, his health. We're safe here. We're surviving. Letting someone in could compromise that." I turned away from the window. If he comes to the conservatory, if he asks for help, we'll reassess. but we don't advertise our presence. Agreed? Marcus nodded reluctantly. We saw the survivor 3 more times over the next week, always at a distance. He seemed to be scavenging the garden's facilities systematically. Then he vanished. Either moved on or met a worse fate. I tried not to think about which. The incident forced a conversation we'd been avoiding. "What's the end game here?" Marcus asked one evening. We were sitting in the education center eating a dinner of roasted cassava and sauté greens. Do we just hide in here forever? Wait for rescue that might never come? I don't know, I admitted. Right now, we're alive, we're healthy. We have food, water, shelter. That's more than most people can say. But it's not living. It's just existing in a bubble. You want to leave? He was quiet for a long moment. No, I don't want to die either. I wonder if there's a middle path, some way to connect with other survivors, without risking everything. Like what? Radio. We've got power. There must be equipment somewhere in the city that still works. Or signs, messages. Let people know there's a safe place here. The idea had merit, but also enormous risk. Broadcasting our location could attract desperate people, dangerous people. It could also attract attention we didn't want. Still, Marcus wasn't wrong about the isolation. Humans are social creatures. 2 people could survive, but could they maintain sanity indefinitely with no outside contact? Let me think about it, I said. Month 3 arrived with the first system failure. I woke to silence. Wrong kind of silence. The conservatory always hummed with ambient noise, water pumps, ventilation fans, the automated misting system. All of it electric, all of it gone. The power was out. Marcus sat up on his sleeping mat. Generator. We don't have one. It had always been on the facility upgrade wish list, never approved by the budget committee. We're on grid power only. How long can the plants survive without climate control? That depended on dozens of factors: temperature outside, time of year, individual species requirements. It was early spring, nights still cool but not freezing. The glass structure would hold some heat but also lose it quickly. The tropical plants, maybe 2 days before serious damage, less if it gets cold tonight. We spent that day in emergency triage mode. Every cold-sensitive plant got moved to the central pavilion. We sealed off sections with plastic sheeting from the potting supplies, creating smaller spaces that would retain heat longer. I taught Marcus the trick of using water barrels as thermal mass. We filled every container we could find and positioned them throughout the space. Water stores heat better than air. As the temperature dropped, the water would release warmth slowly. The infected outside responded to our increased activity. They pressed against the glass, drawn by the sound and movement. I tried to ignore them, focusing on the work. We were racing against nightfall. What if the power doesn't come back? Marcus asked, positioning another water barrel. Then we adapt. We've got some time. Spring temperatures are moderate. By the time it gets really hot, maybe what? Maybe the power comes back. Maybe rescue arrives. Maybe the infected all die off. He was getting worked up, stress breaking through. We're fooling ourselves, Jake. We're trapped in a glass box with no long-term plan. The long-term plan is surviving, I snapped back. Same as it's been since day 1. You want to leave? Door's right there. Good luck out there. He went quiet, hurt registering on his face. I immediately felt like garbage for saying it. "I'm sorry," I said. "That was unfair. You're right that this is precarious, but it's what we have. We make it work or we die trying. Those are the options." Marcus nodded slowly. "I'm not leaving. I'm scared, but I'm not stupid." The conservatory transformed without artificial light. Moonlight filtered through the glass panels, turning everything silver in shadow. The temperature dropped steadily. We huddled in the central pavilion, wrapped in spare burlap we normally used for protecting delicate plants during transport. "Tell me about before," Marcus said. "Before all this, what was your life like?" I thought about my apartment across town, probably ransacked or occupied now. My ex-wife in California with her new family. The quiet routine of work, home, sleep, repeat. Lonely, I admitted. I spent more time with plants than people. Always found them easier to understand. They need sun, water, nutrients. You provide those things, they grow. Simple. People aren't simple. No. People are complicated. They lie, they leave, they disappoint. I pulled the burlap tighter. Plants are honest. They show you exactly what they need. They don't pretend. Is that why you never remarried? Probably. My ex used to say I cared more about the garden than our relationship. She wasn't entirely wrong. My sister always said I worked too much. She wanted me to go out more, meet people, have fun. I kept saying later, after this project, after that deadline. I didn't even call her that last week. We'd argued about something stupid, and I was too stubborn to apologize. You couldn't have known. Doesn't make it hurt less. We sat in the silver darkness, two men surrounded by sleeping plants, sharing grief we'd been carrying separately. Sometimes that's all you can do. Acknowledge the weight and keep carrying it. The power came back 36 hours later. The sudden hum of systems reactivating jolted me from exhausted sleep. Lights flickered on throughout the conservatory. Water pumps engaged. The heating system kicked in with a mechanical sigh that sounded almost relieved. Marcus started laughing, near hysterical with relief. We made it. The plants are okay. Look, they're okay. He was right. The tropical specimens looked stressed but alive. Some leaf drop, some wilting. Nothing catastrophic. Our emergency measures had worked, but the incident was a warning. We couldn't rely on infrastructure that could fail without notice. We needed redundancy, backup systems, independence. We need to start thinking about power alternatives, I said. Solar panels, maybe. The roof of the maintenance building has good exposure. You know how to install solar panels. The conservatory's office had a small library of reference books, and I'd noticed several on sustainable building practices. We've got time. We've got materials. We figure it out. That became our project for month 4, creating independence. We couldn't install actual solar panels. Those required expertise and equipment we didn't have. But we could prepare for the next outage. We built a wood gasifier from plans I found in an old Mother Earth magazine, converting wood scraps into combustible gas that could power a generator if we ever found one. We constructed a rocket mass heater from clay and bricks, capable of warming the central pavilion with minimal fuel. We developed backup watering systems using gravity feed from the roof cisterns. Marcus had a talent for mechanical improvisation. He rigged a pedal-powered pump that could move water from the cisterns to elevated containers, creating pressure without electricity. It was exhausting to operate. 20 minutes of pedaling to fill one container, but it worked. "You missed your calling," I told him, watching him adjust the gear ratio. "You should have been an engineer. My dad wanted me to be a doctor. I chose plants instead. He never forgave me for it." Marcus tightened a bolt, said I was wasting my potential on gardening. "You're using your knowledge to keep us alive. That sounds like potential fulfilled to me." He smiled, rare and genuine. "Yeah, maybe." By month 5, spring had given way to early summer. The temperature outside climbed, and the conservatory's climate control worked overtime to maintain appropriate zones. Our food gardens exploded with productivity. Tomato plants heavy with fruit, pepper bushes producing more than we could eat, melons sprawling across every available surface. We started preserving the excess, sun-drying tomatoes on mesh screens, fermenting vegetables in salt brine, saving seeds from the best producers. What began as survival was transforming into actual agriculture. One evening, while harvesting papaya from the tropical section, Marcus said, "I've been thinking about your question, about connecting with other survivors, and we should do it. Carefully, but we should try." I'd been thinking the same thing. 5 months of isolation was grinding down our mental states. We needed human contact, even if just proof that humanity continued beyond our glass walls. How? Signs, visible from a distance, information about edible plants, safe water sources, basic survival skills. We don't advertise ourselves, but we share knowledge, help people without risking direct contact. It was a good compromise. We spent the next week creating guides written in clear language on weatherproof material, cut from plastic sheeting, marked with permanent ink. Basic botany, which plants are edible, which are medicinal, which are toxic, water purification methods, first aid for common injuries. We packaged them in waterproof bags and placed them at strategic points around the garden's perimeter, visible from the paths but not close to the conservatory. If survivors passed through, they'd find help. If no one came, we'd lost nothing but time. "You think anyone will actually use these?" Marcus asked, placing the last package near the rose garden. "I hope so. Knowledge is the only thing we have too much of to keep to ourselves." Month 6 brought our first frost warning. The automated weather station still functioned, pulling data from municipal systems that somehow remained online. The alert appeared on the office computer, temperatures dropping below freezing within 48 hours. Normally, this would be minor concern. The conservatory's heating system could handle moderate cold. But that assumed consistent power, something we could no longer take for granted. "We need to prepare like the electricity's going out again," I said. "Full emergency protocols." We spent 2 days in intensive preparation, moving plants, sealing sections, filling water barrels. By the time the cold front arrived, we'd created a defensible core. The central pavilion, enclosed in multiple layers of plastic, heated by our improvised rocket mass heater, packed with the most valuable specimens. The temperature dropped steadily. Outside, the infected moved slower, cold affecting their decaying systems. Some collapsed and didn't rise. Others clustered near the conservatory walls, perhaps drawn by the warmth radiating through the glass. "They're going to freeze," Marcus observed, watching them through the transparent barrier. Some of them, anyway. Good. Is it? They were people once. Someone's family, friends, co-workers. They're not people anymore. They're dangers that happen to wear human shapes. Don't confuse the two. But his question nagged at me. At what point had I stopped seeing them as human? When had survival calculus replaced empathy? I didn't have a good answer. The frost came hard that night. We woke to find every glass panel covered in crystalline patterns, beautiful and dangerous. The heating system struggled to maintain temperature. Our backup measures made the difference. The rocket heater radiated warmth. The water barrels released stored heat. The plastic barriers trapped every degree we could capture. The plants survived. We survived. The infected outside were fewer in number when the temperature rose again. Winter was coming. We were as ready as we could be. This is where everything I thought I understood about survival changed completely. What happened in the following months wasn't just about staying alive anymore. It became something larger. If you've stayed with me this far through the glass and the green and the constant edge of danger, then you need to hear how this shelter became something more than refuge. Hit that subscribe button and share this with someone who needs to know that even in the darkest situations, purpose can emerge. Month 7 arrived with the first snow. I stood at the northern wall, watching fat flakes drift down through gray sky settling on the glass panels above. The conservatory had become a warm island in an increasingly frozen world. Inside, the temperature held steady at 72 degrees. Outside, the thermometer read 23. Cold slowed them, and whatever biological processes kept them mobile seemed to struggle in freezing temperatures. Some had wandered away, following whatever broken instinct drove them. Others lay collapsed in the snow, motionless. I didn't know if they were truly dead or just dormant, waiting for warmth to reanimate them. I didn't want to find out. "Jake, you need to see this." Marcus called from the office, his voice carrying an edge of excitement I hadn't heard in months. I found him at the computer, staring at the screen with wide eyes. The municipal weather systems interface showed our local forecast, but that wasn't what had caught his attention. In the corner of the screen, a small notification blinked. Network activity detected. "Someone else is online," Marcus said, "using the city's emergency system. Look." He clicked the notification and a simple text interface opened. Someone had posted a message to the emergency broadcast system. Crude but readable. "Survivors at Riverside Medical. 23 people. Need supplies. Safe zone established. If anyone reads this, we're here." The timestamp showed the message was 4 hours old. Riverside Medical is 6 miles from here. Not just random survivors, but a group. An actual community. My first instinct was caution. 23 people meant 23 mouths to feed. 23 different agendas. 23 potential threats. It also meant skills we didn't have, knowledge we lacked, the possibility of real civilization instead of just existence. "Can you reply?" I asked. Marcus's fingers flew across the keyboard. "I think so. The system's designed for emergency services to coordinate. If we can access the interface." "Yeah, there." "What do we say?" Marcus looked at me expectantly. I thought carefully. "Keep it simple. Don't reveal too much." Marcus typed slowly. Message received. 2 survivors at Ashworth Botanical Garden. Safe and supplied. Good luck. He hit send before I could second-guess the decision. The message disappeared into whatever digital network still functioned. We waited, staring at the screen, but no response came. "Maybe they're not monitoring it constantly," Marcus said. "Or maybe..." The screen blinked. New message. "Ashworth Garden. The conservatory. How are you alive? Marcus grinned and typed back. Glass is stronger than it looks. Plants provide food, water, oxygen, sustainable long-term. Then we have doctor, mechanic, former military. You have food production knowledge. Could benefit both groups. Open to discussion. This was real. Contact with other survivors, the possibility of alliance, trade, shared resources. It was also risk. Unknown people with unknown motivations. Ask about their situation, I told Marcus. Numbers, security, sustainability. The conversation continued for the next hour. The Riverside group had barricaded the hospital's third floor, accessed the roof for rainwater collection, and raided the pharmacy and supply rooms. They had medical expertise and defensive capability but limited food stores. The hospital's cafeteria supplies had lasted 2 months. Now they were rationing carefully and facing shortages within weeks. We had food. They had medicine and security. The basis for trade was obvious. We could help them, Marcus said. We've got excess produce, seeds, knowledge about growing food. They need that. Antibiotics, surgical tools, diagnostic equipment. I'd been worrying about medical emergencies since the beginning. A serious injury or illness could kill us easily without proper treatment. But meeting them means exposure, risk leaving this shelter. Or inviting them here. That was non-negotiable. The conservatory was secure because it was secret, isolated, unknown. Broadcasting its location to 23 strangers was asking for trouble. If we do this, it happens on neutral ground, somewhere we can retreat from if things go wrong. Marcus nodded slowly. So we're really doing this, making contact. I looked around the conservatory at the thriving plants and functional systems we'd built. We'd survived 7 months through careful planning and constant adaptation. This was the next adaptation, reconnecting with humanity. Yeah, I said. We're doing this. We spent 3 days planning the meeting. Location was critical. We needed somewhere visible from a distance, easy to approach, but also easy to escape. The main garden's amphitheater fit the criteria, an open-air stone structure near the front gates, surrounded by clear sightlines. We could observe from the conservatory before committing to approach. Preparation was equally important. We gathered trade goods, seeds packaged in labeled containers, fresh vegetables that would store well. Detailed growing guides we'd created. We also prepared defensive measures, tools that could serve as weapons, a retreat plan, signals we could use if things went wrong. I should go alone, I said on the 3rd day. If something happens, you'll still be safe here. That's garbage and you know it, Marcus shot back. We're both going. 2 sets of eyes, 2 voices. Safety in numbers. Or double the risk. Jake, I'm not letting you do this alone. We're partners in this. Have been since day 1. He was right, though I hated admitting it. We'd survive together. We'd face this together. The meeting was set for noon, on a clear winter day. We sent the coordinates through the emergency system, along with specific instructions. Maximum 5 people, weapons visible, but holstered. Approach slowly. If they brought more than 5 or showed hostile intent, we'd disappear. The morning of the meeting, I barely slept. Every worst-case scenario played through my mind. Ambush, robbery, violence, disease. By the time dawn broke, I'd convinced myself we were making a fatal mistake. Too late to back out now, Marcus said, reading my expression. They're probably already on their way. We left the conservatory at 11:30, locking everything behind us, carrying our trade goods in backpacks. The cold hit immediately after months of climate-controlled comfort. My breath formed clouds in the winter air. Snow crunched under our boots as we crossed the garden grounds toward the amphitheater. The world outside our glass shelter looked alien. Overgrown pathways disappeared under snowdrifts. The carefully maintained landscape had gone wild. Shrubs and trees growing unchecked, nature reclaiming human space with startling speed. We passed frozen fountains and collapsed trellises, the garden's bones visible beneath winter's covering. No infected appeared. The cold had driven them away or killed them. Small mercy. We reached the amphitheater at 11:50. The stone structure sat empty, tiers of seating arranged in a semicircle facing a small stage. We positioned ourselves on the upper level, backs to a wall, with clear views of all approaches. "They're not here yet," Marcus said, his breath steaming. "Maybe they changed their minds, or they're watching us first, same as we do." We waited. Noon came and passed. 5 minutes. 10. 15. Jake. Marcus pointed toward the main path. 5 figures approached from the north. They moved carefully, spread out, maintaining distance from each other. Military tactics, I realized. Whoever these people were, they knew what they were doing. They reached the amphitheater's edge and stopped. The center figure raised a hand in greeting, empty palm visible, universal gesture of peace. "Ashworth survivors?" The voice was male, deep, carrying easily across the space. "That's us," I called back. "Riverside Medical?" "Correct. I'm David Chen, former Army medic. These are some of our people." He gestured to his companions. "We're unarmed. Well, not carrying firearms. Everyone's got a knife these days." "Let's talk." They approached the stage area while we descended from our elevated position. As they got closer, I could see details. David was Asian, maybe 40, with a neat beard and sharp eyes. The others were a mix of ages and backgrounds. A younger man with mechanics grease under his fingernails. An older woman with gray hair and steady hands. A tall guy with military bearing. A nervous-looking teenager who kept glancing around. "You really survived in a greenhouse?" David asked, studying us with professional assessment. "That's impressive. Most glass structures we've seen were compromised early. The Victorian construction is stronger than modern designs," I explained. "Thicker glass, iron reinforcement. Plus we adapted, reinforced the weak points, created defensive layers. And food? You said you're growing enough to sustain yourselves. More than enough. The conservatory was designed to maintain diverse plant ecosystems. We've expanded the edible varieties significantly. Vegetables, fruits, herbs, protein-rich plants. It's not gourmet, but it's nutritious and sustainable." The older woman stepped forward. "I'm Patricia. I was a nurse for 35 years before retirement. If you're really producing food surplus, we desperately need to establish trade. Our people are getting weak on reduced rations." "We need medical supplies," Marcus said. "Antibiotics especially. Also surgical tools, diagnostic equipment, anything that could help treat injuries or illness." "The hospital pharmacy was well stocked," David said. "We can definitely spare antibiotics, antiseptics, basic surgical supplies. What kind of quantities are we talking about for food?" We spent the next hour negotiating. It felt surreal, standing in a snow-covered amphitheater haggling over vegetables and medicine like merchants at some post-apocalyptic market. But it also felt profoundly human. Trade was civilization's foundation. We were rebuilding it from scratch. The deal we struck was straightforward. Weekly exchanges at this location. We'd provide fresh produce, seeds, and growing instructions. They'd supply medicine, tools, and security consultation. David's military experience included perimeter defense and threat assessment. He offered to evaluate the conservatory's setup and suggest improvements. "There's something else," Patricia said as we were finalizing details. "We have people with specialized skills. A teacher, an engineer, a former farmer. If you're interested in expanding your operation, we could send someone to work with you, learn your methods, help with the labor, share knowledge." Allowing an outsider into the conservatory meant revealing our vulnerabilities, trusting someone we barely knew. "Let me think about it," I said carefully. "For now, let's establish the basic trade, build trust. Then we can discuss closer cooperation." David nodded, understanding. "Fair enough. Trust isn't given. It's earned. We'll prove ourselves reliable." We exchanged the first round of goods right there. Fresh vegetables and packaged seeds for a medical kit containing antibiotics, painkillers, antiseptics, and basic surgical tools. The teenager, his name was Ryan, practically cried when he saw the tomatoes. "Real food," he whispered. I forgot what real food looked like. "Eat them slowly," Marcus advised. "Your stomach needs to adjust after months of preserved stuff." As the Riverside group prepared to leave, David pulled me aside. "Listen, there's something you should know. We're not the only survivor group in the area. There's another community about 8 miles east, holed up in a warehouse district. They've tried contacting us, but..." He hesitated. Their messages were aggressive, demanding. They wanted us to share our location, our resources. We refused, and the messages got threatening. "You think they're dangerous. I think they're desperate. Desperation makes people dangerous. Your conservatory produces food, which makes you a target if word gets out. Be careful about who knows your location." The warning settled like ice in my gut. We'd been so focused on survival and isolation, we hadn't considered that success might paint a target on us. "Thanks for the heads up," I said. "We'll stay alert." The walk back to the conservatory felt longer than the walk out. Marcus and I moved quickly, hyper-aware of our surroundings. The medical supplies heavy in our packs. "That was good, right?" Marcus asked. "We made contact, established trade, got medicine. That's progress." I agreed. It's also exposure. If they're aggressive and desperate, they might come looking. But they don't know about us. David said he didn't share our location, not intentionally. But information spreads. People talk. Mistakes happen. I was thinking through contingencies already. We need to increase security. Better early warning systems, multiple retreat options, defensive preparations. We reached the conservatory and locked ourselves inside. The familiar warmth and humidity wrapped around us like embrace. After the frozen world outside, the jungle-like interior felt miraculous. Plants thrived in riotous green abundance. Water trickled from the irrigation system. Life surrounded us, oblivious to the dangers beyond the glass. "We did good today," Marcus said, unpacking the medical supplies with reverent care. "We helped people. We got resources we needed. We're building something bigger than just survival." He was right. But I couldn't shake the feeling that we'd also opened a door we might not be able to close. The weekly trades became routine over the next month. Every 7 days, Marcus and I made the trek to the amphitheater with produce and seeds. The Riverside group arrived with medicine, tools, and occasionally other resources: batteries, rope, a functioning radio. The exchanges were efficient and professional. Both sides benefited enormously. We learned details about their operation. The hospital's third floor had become a miniature fortress: barricaded stairwells, rooftop garden attempts, mostly failing in winter. A functional medical bay, 23 people living in close quarters, dealing with all the tensions and drama that implied. David maintained order through a combination of competence and fair leadership, but it wasn't always easy. We lost someone last week, Patricia told us during the fourth exchange. Pneumonia. We had antibiotics. We had care. But he was older, weakened by months of stress and inadequate nutrition. Sometimes that's just not enough. The reminder of mortality sobered us all. We were surviving, but survival wasn't guaranteed. Disease, injury, accident, any could kill us quickly without proper resources and luck. Your food's helping, David said. People are getting stronger, healthier, the fresh vegetables especially. We'd forgotten what vitamin C from actual sources felt like. We're happy to help, I said. And I meant it. The trade relationship gave purpose beyond just keeping ourselves alive. We were contributing to humanity's continuation, even in a small way. But the arrangement wasn't without complications. Month 8 brought the incident that changed everything. We arrived at the amphitheater for our usual exchange to find the Riverside group already waiting. Something was off immediately. David's expression was tense. Patricia looked worried. The others stood in a tighter cluster than normal. "We have a problem," David said without preamble. "That other group I mentioned, the warehouse community, they found out about our food source. They want in on the arrangement." "How did they find out?" "Ryan." David's jaw clenched. "The kid. He mentioned it to someone he knew from before. Thought the person was trustworthy. Word spread. Now we've got 8 people from the warehouse group demanding to know where the food comes from." Marcus and I exchanged glances. This was exactly what we'd feared. "What did you tell them?" I asked. "Nothing specific. Said we have a trade partner who values privacy. They're insisting on details, threatening to follow us from the exchanges, making noise about taking what they need by force if necessary." "How many people in this warehouse group?" "We estimate 15 to 20. They're rough. Some of them were involved in questionable stuff even before the outbreak. Desperation's brought out their worst instincts." I thought quickly, weighing options. We could cut off the trade relationship, disappear back into isolation. But that meant losing the medical supplies and other resources we'd come to rely on. It also meant abandoning the people at Riverside who depended on our food. Alternatively, we could try expanding the arrangement to include the warehouse group. More mouths to feed, but potentially more skills and resources in return. Except David's description suggested these weren't people we wanted knowing our location. "Third option," Marcus said, reading my thoughts. "We teach the Riverside group to grow their own food. Transfer our knowledge completely. Then we can withdraw without leaving them dependent." It was brilliant and terrifying. Teaching them sustainable agriculture meant empowering them to survive independently, which aligned with my values. It also meant revealing more of our methods, reducing our unique value, and investing significant time outside the conservatory's safety. "How long would that take?" David asked. "Depends on the setup. If you've got space, soil access, water systems, minimum several weeks of intensive instruction." longer to establish reliable production. "We have the rooftop," Patricia said. "It's been too cold for serious growing. But spring's coming. We could prepare now. Plant when temperatures rise." David looked at his group, some silent consensus passing between them. "If you're willing to teach us, we'll do whatever's necessary to learn. Get us to the point where we can feed ourselves, and we'll deal with the warehouse people without compromising your location." It was a risk, but isolation forever wasn't sustainable either. Eventually, we'd need broader human connection, larger community. This could be the first step. "All right," I said. "We'll do it. But this requires coming to your location, seeing your setup, spending extended time away from our shelter. We need assurances about safety." "You'll have them," David promised. "We'll provide security, privacy, whatever you need. You're giving us survival. We won't forget that." And so began the teaching phase. Over the next 6 weeks, Marcus and I became regular visitors to Riverside Medical. The hospital's rooftop was exposed and cold, but it had potential: decent square footage, drainage systems, structural support. We helped them construct raised beds from salvaged materials, prepare soil from composted medical waste, and garden materials we brought from the conservatory, and design irrigation using the rooftop water collection system. The work was intensive. We taught them about soil composition, pH balance, nutrient requirements. We explained crop rotation, companion planting, pest management, without chemicals. We shared our knowledge of which plants provided maximum nutrition in minimum space, which varieties grew quickly, which could tolerate less than ideal conditions. The Riverside people were eager students. Patricia proved particularly adept, her careful medical precision translating well to plant care. Ryan, the teenager, threw himself into the work with surprising dedication, maybe trying to make up for his earlier mistake. Even David, despite his military background, had a gentle hand with seedlings. "My grandmother gardened," he told me one afternoon while we were transplanting tomato starts. "I used to help her as a kid. Forgot how peaceful this work can be." "It's meditation," I agreed. "You can't rush a plant. You can only provide what it needs and wait. Forces patience." As we worked, I got to know the Riverside community better. 23 individuals, each with their own story of survival and loss. The mechanic, whose name was Tony, had watched his entire family turn in the first week. The teacher, Diane, had been trapped in her elementary school with 6 students for a month before finding the hospital group. Everyone carried trauma, but they also carried determination. They were good people. That made what came next so much worse. We were on the rooftop during week 5 of the training, planting early spring vegetables, when the first gunshot echoed across the city. Everyone froze. David immediately moved to the rooftop edge, scanning the streets below. More shots followed. Rapid fire, unmistakable. "The warehouse group," he said grimly. "They're making their move." "Move on what?" Marcus asked, fear creeping into his voice. "On us. They must have followed someone. Figured out our location. They're coming." The Riverside people scrambled to defensive positions they'd clearly drilled. David started barking orders, coordinating response. Patricia pulled Marcus and me toward the rooftop access door. "You need to leave," she said urgently. "Now. This isn't your fight, and if they find you here, they'll force you to reveal your shelter's location. We're not leaving you to." "Yes, you are. We're armed, trained, prepared for this. You're civilians. Go, now." More gunshots, Closer this time. Voices shouting demands from the street. The warehouse group was laying siege. David appeared beside Patricia. There's a service exit on the ground floor east side. It'll get you out away from the main action. Go. We'll hold them off. Every instinct screamed at me to help, to stay, to fight. But Patricia was right. We weren't fighters. We'd be liabilities in a combat situation. Survive this, I told David. Come to the next exchange point. We'll be there. Count on it. We ran. The service exit brought us into an alley 2 blocks from the hospital. The sounds of combat followed us. Gunfire, shouting, something exploding. Marcus and I sprinted through snow-covered streets, taking random turns, focused only on distance and safety. We made it 3 blocks before we encountered them. 4 men, emerging from a side street, wearing mismatched winter gear and carrying weapons. They saw us immediately. Hey, stop. We didn't stop. We ran harder, cutting through an overgrown park, jumping a frozen stream, scrambling over a collapsed fence. Behind us, the men gave chase. My lungs burned. My legs ached. Marcus was faster, pulling ahead, but he stayed close, refusing to leave me behind. We crashed through dead undergrowth, slipped on ice, kept moving. The conservatory was still miles away. We'd never make it at this pace. Split up, I gasped. Meet at the old visitors center. No way. I'll lead them off. Go. Before he could protest, I veered left, making myself the obvious target, crashing through brush loudly. The pursuing men followed me, just as I'd hoped. I heard Marcus's footsteps fading in the other direction. Safe. He'd make it. I just had to survive long enough for escape to matter. The chase became a blur of desperate motion. I ran through areas I half recognized, trying to circle back toward the botanical garden without leading them directly to it. My breath came in ragged gasps. My vision narrowed. I was 43, in decent shape from months of physical work, but not trained for this kind of exertion. I burst into a clearing, the old rose garden, recognizable even under snow. The conservatory was visible in the distance, glass panels catching pale winter sunlight. So close, too far. Behind me, crashing sounds. They were still coming. I changed direction, heading away from the conservatory, protecting its location even as my body screamed for shelter. Through the Japanese garden, past the frozen koi pond, into the bamboo grove near the property's edge. My foot caught on a hidden root. I went down hard, face first, into snow and frozen ground. Pain exploded through my shoulder. I tried to rise, slipped, fell again. The men caught up. Don't move. A gun barrel pressed against the back of my head. Where's your friend? Gone. I managed. Through gasps. Different direction. The garden that's growing fresh stuff? Don't know what you're talking about. Hands grabbed me, hauled me upright. 4 faces stared at me with hunger and desperation. They looked half-starved, eyes sunken, skin stretched tight. We know the hospital group is getting fresh vegetables. Someone's growing food. Where? I scavenge, I lied. Find preserved stuff in abandoned houses. That's all. One of them, a scarred man with missing teeth, leaned close. You're lying. We've been watching. You and your friend show up at that amphitheater every week with produce. Fresh produce. Where's it coming from? The hospital raid was probably a distraction, a way to flush out the actual food source. Old greenhouses, I said, improvising. North side of the city, Automated systems still running, but they're failing. Won't last much longer. Show us! My mind raced. If I led them north away from the conservatory, Marcus would have time to secure everything. But these men would eventually realize I'd lied. They'd probably kill me then. If I refused, they'd probably kill me now. The decision was made by circumstance. A roar split the air, animalistic and human. From the bamboo grove's far side, figures emerged. Infected. Maybe a dozen, drawn by our noise and movement. The cold had slowed them, but not stopped them entirely. The warehouse men spun, weapons rising. Gunfire erupted. The infected kept coming, oblivious to bullets except when they hit critical targets. In the chaos, I ran. I didn't think. I just moved, scrambling through the bamboo, slipping and sliding, driven by pure survival instinct. Behind me, screams mixed with gunfire, mixed with inhuman sounds. I didn't look back. I ran until the sounds faded. Ran until my legs gave out. Collapsed in a snowdrift near the visitors' center. Chest heaving, vision swimming. Marcus found me there 10 minutes later. Oh God, I thought. He pulled me upright, checking for injuries. Are you hurt? Bruised? Exhausted? Alive? I coughed, tasting copper. The warehouse people, they were watching us. They know we're the food source. Did they follow you? Infected got them. I don't know if they survived. I grabbed his shoulder. We need to get back. Secure everything. They might still come. We limped back to the conservatory together, taking an indirect route, watching constantly for pursuit. The familiar glass structure appeared through the trees like salvation. We locked ourselves inside and immediately began emergency preparations. Reinforcing doors, checking perimeter, arming ourselves with every tool that could serve as weapon, preparing to defend our shelter against human threat for the first time. But no, one came. Hours passed. Evening fell. The conservatory's lights created a warm glow against winter darkness. We sat in the central pavilion, exhausted and rattled, listening to silence. We can't keep doing this, Marcus said finally. The trades, the teaching, the exposure, it's too dangerous. You want to go back to pure isolation. I want to survive. Today we almost didn't. He was right. But isolation meant abandoning the riverside people, cutting off the medical supplies, returning to existence without purpose. Let's see if they made it, I said. If David and the others survived the warehouse attack, then we decide. The waiting was agonizing. We maintained watch through the night, taking turns sleeping, ready for threats that never materialized. Dawn came cold and clear. Still no sign of pursuit. At noon, we cautiously made our way to the amphitheater. David was there, alone. His face was bruised, his arm in a makeshift sling. He looked exhausted but alive. When he saw us approaching, relief flooded his expression. You made it, he said. Thank God. The warehouse people? We drove them off. It cost us. 2 wounded, 1 critical. But we held the hospital. His jaw clenched, including their leader. They'll regroup, try again. Did they follow us? Know about the conservatory? Either way, they're not coming back to report. Small mercy. But the threat remained. Other warehouse people still existed, still desperate. Still, we taught you enough, I said. Everything you need to know about growing food. You can take it from here. We need to pull back, disappear. protect what we've built. But Jake, Marcus, we couldn't have survived without you. The food kept us strong enough to fight. The knowledge you shared will keep us alive long term. We owe you everything. You owe us nothing. We helped each other. That's how humanity survives. We completed one final exchange, medical supplies for seeds, and detailed written instructions on everything we'd taught. Then we said goodbye to people who'd become something like friends. If you ever need help, David said, if your situation changes, come find us. You'll always have allies at Riverside. Same goes for you. If things get desperate, you can come to us. We won't turn you away. The walk back to the conservatory felt like closing a chapter. We'd reached out to other survivors, built relationships, contributed to the larger cause of human survival. Now we were retreating, pulling back into our glass sanctuary, choosing security over connection. It hurt more than I'd expected. That night, surrounded by thriving plants and controlled climate, I realized what we'd actually built. This wasn't just a shelter. It was a seed bank, a library of agricultural knowledge, a reserve of sustainable food production capability. If civilization ever truly rebuilt, places like this would be invaluable. We should document everything, I said to Marcus. Write down every technique we've developed, every lesson we've learned. Make it so that if something happens to us, the knowledge survives. Planning for the worst, preparing for reality. We're not immortal. But what we've learned here, what we've created, that could outlast us. That could matter long term. So we began the documentation project. Detailed manuals on everything: plant care, food preservation, water management, pest control, climate adaptation. We wrote in clear language, illustrated with diagrams, organized for easy reference. If someone found this place after we were gone, they'd have everything needed to continue what we'd started. The work gave new purpose. We weren't just surviving anymore. We were preserving knowledge for whatever came next. Month 8 became month 9, then month 10. Winter grudgingly gave way to early spring. The temperature outside climbed above freezing regularly. Ice melted, snow receded. The world began the slow process of reawakening. In the conservatory, the spring planting season arrived. We expanded the vegetable gardens further, taking advantage of increased solar energy and warming temperatures. Tomatoes flourished. Peppers produced abundantly. The fruit trees bloomed in profusion. We also began experimenting with new species. Using seeds we'd collected from around the conservatory's grounds, we cultivated plants that could be transplanted outside eventually. Native varieties, cold-hardy, adapted to regional climate. The beginning of reseeding the surrounding landscape. Why? Marcus asked when I explained the project. We're not farmers trying to restore the garden. We're survivors maintaining a shelter. Today we're survivors. Tomorrow, maybe we're rebuilders. If humanity recovers, it'll need food systems, agriculture, green spaces. We're keeping that knowledge alive. It was optimistic, perhaps naively so, but optimism felt necessary after months of crisis management. One morning in late April, Marcus called me to the north wall. Look. I followed his pointing finger. In the distance, beyond the garden's overgrown grounds, movement, not infected. These figures moved with coordination and purpose. A group, maybe 6 or 7 people traveling together along what had been the main road. Survivors. I said, probably passing through. Should we signal them? I thought about David's warning, about the warehouse people, about all the risks that came with exposure. Then I thought about the documentation project, about preserving knowledge, about the point of survival if you never reconnected with humanity. No, I said finally, not yet. We watch, we learn. If they seem safe, if they circle back, if they're clearly searching for help, then maybe. But we don't advertise. The group passed from view, heading east. We never saw them again. But their passage reminded me that the world continued beyond our glass walls. People still moved, searched, survived. We weren't alone, just isolated. The question was whether isolation remained the right choice. I didn't have an answer yet. What I did have was this: an acre of thriving green life, 8 months of accumulated knowledge, a partner who'd become a genuine friend through shared crisis, food security, medical supplies, purpose. Sometimes survival isn't about dramatic rescues or miraculous escapes. Sometimes it's about quiet persistence, careful planning, and the daily choice to continue. That's what the conservatory represented. Continuation against odds. Life persisting in a glass sanctuary while the world outside struggled with death. We'd started as 2 frightened men hiding from monsters. We'd become gardeners, teachers, preservers of knowledge. The transformation happened so gradually, I'd barely noticed until now. "Marcus," I said, still watching the empty road where the travelers had passed. "Whatever happens next, whatever we decide about contact and community and the future, I'm glad I'm here with you. I'm glad we survived together." He smiled, rare and genuine. "Same, Jake. Same." The conservatory hummed around us, systems running, plants growing, life continuing. Outside, spring advanced slowly, bringing warmth and renewal. Inside, we tended our garden, maintained our shelter, and prepared for whatever came next. Because that's what survivors do. We prepare, we adapt, we continue. The glass walls that had once seemed like fatal vulnerability now felt like protective embrace. This place had saved us. We, in turn, had saved it, keeping the plants alive, the systems running, the knowledge preserved. It wasn't the life I'd imagined 8 months ago, when the world ended, but it was life. Real, purposeful. And in a dead world, that was everything. The sun set over the conservatory, painting the glass panels in shades of gold and amber. Inside, the temperature regulated automatically, humidity misted at precise intervals, grow lights supplemented, fading natural illumination. Everything continued in careful balance. Marcus and I ate dinner in the education center. Roasted taro, fresh salad, papaya for dessert. Simple food, but we'd grown every ingredient ourselves. That made it taste like victory. "Tomorrow," I said between bites, "we should check the water collection system. Spring rains are coming, and we want to maximize capture, and I need to repot those banana saplings. They're outgrowing their containers, plus documentation. We're only halfway through the medicinal plants section, so another busy day in paradise." I laughed at that, but sanctuary, refuge, hope made tangible in glass and green? Yeah, that fit. Outside, night settled over the dead world. Inside, life bloomed eternal, tended by 2 gardeners who'd learned that survival wasn't just about staying alive. It was about preserving the possibility of future growth. And in our glass conservatory, surrounded by thriving plants and accumulated knowledge, we'd preserved exactly that. The end. If this story moved you, if it made you think about resilience and adaptation, and what really matters when everything falls apart, then share it with someone who needs that message. Comment below with what you'd grow first in your own survival garden. And subscribe, because stories of human persistence in impossible situations matter now more than ever.